Hello, my name's Ralph and welcome back to the channel. It's my time, let's go. Today we're moving along with the 96-inch motor, and what we plan to do is to get these valves in the head and get the springs set the way they want, and hopefully we can show you a little bit of information on that as we go about springs. We're going to try and grind these valves down and get them down in the head so that we don't have this overlap problem that we're having where they're possibly hitting, and we want to eliminate that by enough of a range so that it won't happen again. So stick with us and let's get at it. All right. So where we're at today, to start with, we've adjusted our valves down with our new checker, and we can only get 13 thousandths of an inch in there, and that's kind of leaning to one side, so I'd be closer to 10 in there. And so what we're trying to do is get a minimum of 30 thousandths of an inch in there, maybe 60, but we don't want to have to sink the valves up in there too far. So we're going to go take you with us and go along and see what we can do. So we're just taking a measurement between the valves, as there is a set number that you should try and get between the two of them. And we've got a little set of calipers which we've ground the ends off of so we can measure the distance valve to valve. And we've got that number at 0.262 thousandths of an inch. Roughly around there, 260 thou. So we're pretty close. According to the calculations and what Andrew says on things, it should be over 300. But we found out some other thing to go by, so we're going to do that. But in any case, this gives us a starting point between the valves, so we know where we're going. So next I'm going to measure the valve stem protrusion and how much is sticking up there. And it gives me a point to work from so that I know how many thousandths of an inch I'm moving it up. Rear head, we are 2.0475 on the intake, which is pretty close to stock. Exhaust. So now as we cut the seats up in there, I can keep an idea on how far we're going up in there by the length of these valves on the stems. That's the plan. We're going to start taking some cuts off the exhaust seat. We know it's up high. Start working away at it. So it's a slow process. We want to keep checking as we go. And we're getting a nice wide seat all around. 757. We've got 10 thou out of it there. So now we're going to take a little cut with our 31 that we've widened out to the edge of the seat. Now I've got some off the exhaust, so now we're going to work a bit on the intake. Try to split the difference of the two. So we're going to use our valve spring heights checker here, which is a small micrometer, and we've hooked up our valve collar. And now we'll just put this down where we got the numbers around here. And looks like we're 935, let's call that 37, 937 from the floor, from the aluminum, up to the outer side of the valve collar. So that's the valve stem, that'll be our valve height, how we'll figure it out, and that's pretty big right now. All right, so we'll go along and do our exhaust one. You have to have these numbers to give us a starting point of where we're going from, and we'll check where our numbers are there. Let's call that 1314. All right, that'll give us some starting numbers to work from, and as we cut our seats down, those numbers will increase. First off, we're going to put our little cheater springs in there. They're just a lighter weight, although they can be a little bugger to put in there. one. Just put this little rag in here, helps keep the valves from going down when I'm pushing on them. There, that will keep our springs in place. Almost 280 in there, so we have gained some. What we're going to do now is hook up our valve checker because we haven't done this head yet, and I'm curious to see. We've taken a few cuts and moved things down a bit, but I want to check as a starting point to see where we're at and see how far we got to go, because we don't want to have to cut down any farther than what we have to. All right, so now we've got our checker set on, and we're going to do our exhaust valve here first. Got it zeroed out on the 0. 1, 2, 10, 20, 30, 40, and we're 50 on the exhaust. We're 249 on the intake. 1, 2, 10, 20, 30, 40, 49. Now we very gently turn it over. And yes, we've gained a little. That's a 16th thou. We can't really get that in there, so I'd say we're closer to maybe like 15. Yeah. So we've got 15 thou, and our exhaust valve is considerably higher than our intake valve. So I think that's what we're going to work on, the exhaust valve, and try to get that down a ways. 16, and I need at least 30. All right, so we'll take it apart and we'll go along and work on it again. But judging by that, we got somewhere to go from. So now that we've got our little checker in there, we can see I was about 910, 11, 12 over here, and now I would say 919 over here. So even with the small amount of work we've done and taken our time, we've managed to remove that much off the valve seat. So now I can see by looking at the unit there that we've probably taken 7/1000 of an inch off of there and gone down in. As I said, I could probably use grinding stones, but I don't really want to do that at this point. If I can cut it by hand and get it down, it's a little more tedious this way, but at least then I know where I'm going. So having this little gauge to check, you know, along with my calipers, gives me a quick check, but having this little gauge lets me see really what's happening, and I can see the close amounts. So I'm just going to keep cutting away until I can get that valve down a little bit, and we'll see how much I have to get down in order to give me the clearance that I need. I may have to take some off the intake as well, but the exhaust valve is standing up pretty proud and pretty tall, and it was a hair shorter, so we're going to work on that first. Each time you should be cleaning off the stones just so they cut nice and get the debris out of there. So we're going to try to get a little more out of it, but at least by doing it this way you sort of get a feel for it. You have to sort of pull up on it to try and lock make sure they're locked into place. Of course, they're not as much as they'd be under spring pressure. Yeah, 24. So we set up our checker on this head
as we started on it, and I only had like 10, maybe 13 thousandths in there. We've made a few cuts, and I just wanted to check before I went too far. This was a 13 thou one that we could barely get between it. So I could just get an 18 in there. Yeah, 18 thou in there now. So we'll move ahead with them and take them apart again and do what we got to do on them. But at least now, having made a series of cuts on it and paying attention to where I'm going gives me a little better figure on how much to cut. I don't want to go any deeper than I have to, and I got some numbers in my head that we talked about, so I'm going to shoot for that. So, but seeing that having it to go, you know, that I've gained 5 thou by how much I've taken off it in there. It takes quite a bit. The valves have to go in quite a bit to move them apart. But we'll keep working at it. So we're continuing to check on our head here, and now we've got it in our device, and we've made some cuts. I'm hoping that I got close. Now we were 13 thou. So let's try a 24, and the 24 will go in there. No problem. 26, 27, let's try a 28 in there. Not quite. Okay. Again, on an angle like that, but it should be straight out at 90 degrees to the head. So I got a 28 thou in there, which is a hell of a lot better than what I was like 10 to 13 in the beginning. So we're going to have to sink the valves a little bit farther to get down. I don't think I have to go all the way to 60. So we're going to try to go a little bit more on it. Well, we just keep working away, trying to move things down. I'm trying to get a reading on where about the valves are sitting in there now before I go too much farther. Sort of a interesting fact is that the valve packs, even though they were shimmed, appeared that they didn't have much for clearance. Most valve packs that I've read, you know, are rated at 1.80 inches, and it seemed like these ones, a couple of them so far, went back to put the original valves in them and check them out, and they were below that, and they had 30 thou shims on them. So I don't think that helped with anything. Right now I'm just trying to get a mark around here so I can see, kind of giving me a marking that I can go by. You can see the blue. There we go. I think that our outside valve seat is a little high, so cut, so I think it has to be narrowed down in order to drop the valve down some more down into it. Just keep trying stuff. I don't want to go too far, but a minute now. Certainly not too far by the other measurements, but now we're just going to check to see what our valve stem protrusion is, how far we're sticking out. And I keep checking it periodically. It tells me how far I've moved the seat down and what I'll still need up here for the spring pack. But I like to keep an eye on it as I'm going. 1 inch 939 thou down. Right now, 1.939 minus 50 thou for the pack. 1.889. And most stuff is 1.80 spring stacks, as I recall. I'd say we don't know what we got in there, but we are down safely enough to decide whether to take more off of this or go to work on the intake. I sort of want to stay away from the intake as much as I can. The exhaust, you can move down in there, and yes, you are restricting the flow by cutting down into the seats, and we'll have to deal with that.
And I will have to move the intake down some. I know I'm going to have to do that, but my clearance apart is getting farther, and we've got enough here now for that, so I guess we'll have to see from there, won't we? That looks pretty good. Tired of cutting this seat, so I'm hoping that we're getting pretty close to where it's supposed to be. Should have moved it down a little bit further. Well, I'm hoping I don't have to go too much deeper on that one. I'm going to do a little bit on the intake side, but you can probably see that seat in there. I don't want to use a light because I find a light just blurs it all out, so try to get the best angle I can for you, but it seems to be pretty good right there. And I've got enough stacked up that I was able to check with my my valve spring checker here to give me my distance from the floor, from the head, right up to the groove here in these, and that'll give me my total height there for my spring pack. As I said, with these ones we're a little short, and I'm not sure on the spring pack, but I know I gotta have 180 anyway. I'm pretty sure about that. So now I'm within specs on that, and I'm gonna check it one more time here, as a matter of fact, just to see if that changed anything, but I think that's about good. I think we'll try to take a little bit, I'm gonna take a measurement of the intake, and then I'm gonna try to move it down a little bit and get an idea of maybe between the two without having to set the gauge up. But I know that I got to cut some off the intake, and I at this point I'm good with the exhaust, so I would just as soon leave it there. There's a lot of cutting because of the shorter stem. And get sort of a measurement of this as well, which is not as critical as having the space between them. But this is sort of a running number here. And I'm measuring between the valves. 2.89, I would say. 0.289. What do they say it should be? It should be my left. So I think I'll set up my spring checker, my truck style spring checker, and see where I'm at in between right now. The exhaust valve has now gone down below the intake valve, which is great. Be nice to stick a 30 in there and wiggle it around. We can go 28, no problem. 30. Try 32. And sideways I got a lot, but it's got to be straight in. So about 32. I'd say that's about where we're at right now. So if you did the calculations at 280 thousandths of an inch, and we have 289 valve to valve here. So we're right in close there. We're going to try to drop the intake valve a little bit, I think. That's going to be the next thing. I don't think I'm going to go too far with the exhaust, although I'll measure them both and make a decision. There, we got a nice lap happening there. Just a hair in off of the front edge. So we're about centered up in the valve there. And that's about what they should look like. The bluing on it, you can almost see the seat there. Takes quite a bit of cutting for the valve to move downwards. And it's scary at sometimes.
One thing this is not going to do is not going to collide the valves, which it has been doing. All right. I think we'll put our checker together and see where we're at.
So if you enjoyed this video, please subscribe, like, ring the bell, do those things. They all help our channel to grow and we appreciate it very much. So stick around for the next in the series on this 96 motor to see it starting to come together.